Around 43 years old in 1953, Akira Kurosawa had seen the effects of war on his home country. Japan had massive propagandistic control over its film industry since a law passed in 1930 due to the ever-growing need for young men to enlist during World War II. Deemed unfit to serve by a doctor in the early 1930s, Kurosawa hated war and naturally hated its consequences. He had made it a point to embody his hatred of war through his art, which was often judged by his peers in the filmmaking industry in Japan. However, in the 1950s, Kurosawa was a well-established artist. He had been recognized by his fans of cinema for his emotionally gripping dramas, Stray Dog and Ikiru. Kurosawa loved the process of writing, which fueled his obsession with the joy of life. When he was given 128 million yen, the most expensive budget a Japanese filmmaker had ever acquired, to make his first samurai film, he could not pass the offer. He shacked himself up for 6 painstaking weeks with co-writers Shinobu Hashimoto and Hideo Ugani, not allowing phone calls or visitors. What the three created in those 6 weeks was the blueprint of modern story writing and the script for one of the most influential films of all time. Seven Samurai tells the story of a band of samurai defending a village torn by bandits in the Japanese Civil War in 1586. Each samurai comes from a different walk of life, representing unique ideologies and struggles, all while still adhering to the samurai way. The samurai have varying beliefs surrounding the current situation, which heightens the conflict between each other. The samurai agree to find the bandits in exchange with the peasants for a bowl of rice a day, which doesn't just demand respect from the audience, but creates an example of selflessness that exists without any sort of verbal exposition. While there were 7 samurai total, only 4 had the specifics of plot and character development. Kanbei Shimada is the experienced leader of the band of Ronin who selflessly sacrifices his samurai topknot to look like a monk to save a young boy from a bandit. Shichiroji is second in command, who is Shimada's old friend. Katsushiro is an inexperienced son of a wealthy landowning Ronin, pledges himself to Shimada in the beginning of the film and symbolizes the child-to-adult pipeline of a young man in love. Kikuchiyo, played by Toshiro Mifune, was a peasant that disguised himself as a samurai, who served as the comedy relief and a mixture of the ideologies between the samurai and the peasants. While the film was released in 1954, Kurosawa took the time and place very seriously, providing an astonishingly accurate cultural interpretation of the Sengoku period Japan in the year 1586. Each samurai were given unique yet inherently samurai attributes. In the film, new samurai were tested with physical and mental alertness, alluding to Tsukahara Bokuden, a real duelist in Sengoku period Japan. The preparations made with the peasants, no matter how strange, were true to the ethos of real samurai warriors. Owing to the fact that Kurosawa wrote detailed journals on each individual character before writing the film, they're considered to be some of the most revolutionary and dynamic characters of their time. These character types would go on to influence the likes of Star Wars, the Lord of the Rings films, and Harry Potter. The characters as a group would later influence the Avengers, Saving Private Ryan, A Bug's Life, and its licensed beat-by-beat American cowboy remake, The Magnificent Seven. Each character in Seven Samurai contributes to the story's themes of honor, sacrifice, and social class conflict. Their relationships and struggles make the film a timeless classic. Seven Samurai wasn't only a masterpiece in storytelling, but also innovated heavily in the craft of filmmaking, providing intensely dynamic angles for shots. Kurosawa intensifies the contrast in his lighting, essentially inventing what we know today as cinematic lighting. He edited his own films and utilized cross-cutting, which allowed him to further display his intentions in each scene. Kurosawa was the godfather of utilizing the craft of filmmaking and his art interchangeably, essentially blurring the lines between the two. In the 1950s, the Japanese had originally cast Seven Samurai aside due to its anti-war themes and over-budget set. However, It was a smash hit everywhere else, winning the Silver Lion Award at the 1954 Venice Film Festival and influencing a myriad of Hollywood films. He was so respected that when fired from Tora 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 in 1970, Kurosawa would be funded by George Lucas to make his next film, Kagemusha, in 1980. As Kurosawa based his style on the classic American Western, he returned the favor by helping reignite the genre. 6 years after the original film's release, John Sturges made a licensed cowboy remake called The Magnificent Seven, a love letter to the original film that spawned many other Western remakes and loose adaptations of Kurosawa films. The original Django and A Fistful of Dollars were remakes of Yojimbo. Space Western Star Wars was a loose adaptation of The Hidden Fortress. The Outrage was a retelling of Rashomon. Many of these films are still heralded as some of the greatest of their era by American film lovers, who always credit Kurosawa and Seven Samurai for the film's stories and innovations. The new wave of modern Hollywood directors was sparked by Akira Kurosawa and Seven Samurai. Even today, it is incredibly difficult to find a director that is in any way critical of Akira Kurosawa and his contributions to film. In fact, it's hard to find anyone in the film business who even dares to dislike his films. The term perfection is an incredibly dangerous word to use, yet most filmmakers would agree that Seven Samurai is just that.
For me, Kurosawa is the Beethoven of movie directors. It's that recognizable full sound that Beethoven had that is so unmistakable.
George Lucas, one of the most recognizable names in both cinema and blockbuster film, loved Kurosawa's films. He originally tried to cast Toshiro Mifune, who played Kikuchiyo, as Darth Vader in Star Wars, but Mifune politely declined, stating his high expectations for samurai as a reason. George Lucas was quite disappointed, considering Kikuchiyo was his inspiration for the character of Han Solo, while Obi-Wan Kenobi was inspired by General Rokurota Makabe from The Hidden Fortress, all played by Mifune. Although Lucas rewrites the script several times, Star Wars is still often seen as a loose adaptation of The Hidden Fortress, and its influence is still prevalent throughout the film. Seven Samurai is referenced almost consistently in Star Wars media, as the internationally renowned franchise would never be the same without it. In the Clone Wars episode, Bounty Hunters, and the Mandalorian episode Sanctuary, both adapt the plot of Seven Samurai as well-crafted homages to Kurosawa and his influence on Star Wars. In 2022, a Han Solo and Chewbacca comic adapted the story, assembling warriors to defend a village from raiders.
My favorite of all time is really Seven Samurai. Then maybe Yojimbo, and then Akuru, and maybe Hidden Fortress at that. So it's not at the very top of my list, but I was impressed and I liked it. And it's really his visual style to me that is so strong and unique, and again, a very, very powerful element in how he tells his stories.
The character of Kikuchiyo has arguably influenced more characters throughout film history than any other character in Seven Samurai. Some characters as prevalent as Iron Man and Captain America, while others as not so obvious as Dewey Finn from School of Rock. His utilization of the ironically witted and hardened lone wolf archetype had created a basis of character construction that proved to be inherently dynamic, which in turn allowed creative room for the character deconstruction and progression. From the Battle of Helm's Deep in The Lord of the Rings to the protection of the Fremen in Dune Parts 1 and 2, Seven Samurai still hasn't seized its hand from the influence of cinema. Often seen as the first piece of modern cinema, it pioneered filmmaking techniques and storytelling methods that have since become standard in action, adventure, and even blockbuster films. Many would argue modern filmmakers owe a debt to Seven Samurai for creating the blueprint for contemporary filmmaking, and they would be correct. Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai is not only a great film in its own right, but the source of a genre that would flow through the rest of the century.